Ayrton Senna was a god among Formula One drivers. The things he could do behind the wheel seemed to defy the laws of physics, like it wasn't even fair. So we are going to look into the myths, the facts, and the weird about Ayrton Senna on today's episode of 5 Weird Things. Welcome to the channel. First, like, subscribe, share the channel, and the videos. I just got into Formula One over the last few years. The drivers now, they're great. But that's kind of like thinking LeBron is the greatest of all time only because you've never seen Michael Jordan or Larry Bird play live. Senna was that good. Your thoughts? Ayrton Senna, GOAT or not? All right, let's get into it. First, the things we all need to know. Ayrton Senna was a Brazilian Formula One legend, often regarded as one of the greatest drivers in motorsport history. Born in Sao Paulo in 1960, he rose from a karting prodigy to a 3-time Formula One world champion, winning titles in 1988, 1990, and 1991 with McLaren. Known for his blistering speed, precision, and near mystical ability to drive in wet conditions, Senna was a force of nature on the track. Beyond his talent, Senna was a deeply complex figure, intensely competitive, yet profoundly spiritual. Off the track, he championed charitable causes in Brazil, using his fame to address social inequality. He lived the way he died, on the track, going faster than everyone else. Senna's legacy endures as a symbol of brilliance, passion, and a relentless drive that transcended the limits of the sport. Everybody got that? Good. Weird thing number 5, the crash that took his life. Ayrton Senna's fatal crash at the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix was one of the darkest days in motorsport, both literally and figuratively, as it cast a shadow over Formula One forever. It happened at the Tamburello corner, a notorious stretch of the Imola circuit where drivers danced with death while their cars whispered, "I hope your will is updated." Senna, in his Williams car, was leading the race on lap 7 when things went catastrophically wrong. The car shot off the track at 191 miles an hour and slammed into a concrete wall at an angle so unforgiving, even the Grim Reaper probably winced. To make matters worse, the impact caused a piece of the car's suspension to break off and pierce his helmet. The aftermath was chilling. Formula One, a sport that thrives on pushing limits, was suddenly forced to confront the consequences of its unchecked adrenaline addiction. But leave it to Formula One to miss the big picture and ask the real question. Can we make the walls softer, or should we just redesign the cars so drivers can't die quite so dramatically? Senna's death wasn't just the tragic loss of a motorsport legend, it was a wake-up call. The incident led to sweeping changes in Formula One safety, including improved car designs, better crash barriers, and a renewed effort to keep drivers alive long enough to spend their prize money. In the end, Senna's crash was a grim reminder that even the greatest drivers are not invincible. It also proved that when it comes to high-speed racing, the line between glory and disaster is thinner than a Formula One tire and far less forgiving. Weird thing number 4. How good was Senna? Ayrton Senna wasn't just good, he was so good he made other Formula One drivers look like they'd won their seats in a raffle. His driving skill was less about controlling a car and more like bending reality to his will. Watching him race was like witnessing a magic trick. Everyone else was bound by the laws of physics while Senna just smirked and rewrote them. Take the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix, for example. A torrential downpour turned the track into a slip and slide from hell, and they raced in that. But while everyone else was tiptoeing around the corners like grandma on ice, Senna was slashing through the field in a Toleman, basically the Formula One equivalent of a shopping cart with a spoiler. And some say he would have won the race if the race had not been stopped early. It's as if the officials saw him coming and thought, this guy's embarrassing enough people already. Then there was the 1993 European Grand Prix at Donington. Senna went from 5th to 1st on the opening lap, overtaking cars as if they were parked. It wasn't racing, it was a public execution on wheels. His rivals later described it as humbling, which is polite code for, we cried a lot. And who can forget the 1991 Brazilian Grand Prix? His car got stuck in 6th gear for the last third of the race. Senna still won. By the end, he was so physically drained he could barely lift the trophy, proving once and for all that even his sweat was more determined than most drivers. Senna didn't race cars, he dominated souls. Competing against him wasn't a sport, it was a psychological horror movie. You didn't just lose to Senna, you were haunted by him. Weird thing number 3. Ayrton was also an activist. Ayrton Senna wasn't just a legend on the track, he was also a humanitarian off of it, championing causes in Brazil like he was trying to win the Grand Prix of good deeds. The man had a knack for speed everywhere. On the track, he broke records, and in his philanthropy, he broke the stereotype that athletes only donate for the tax write-off. Senna was deeply troubled by the poverty and inequality in Brazil, a country where potholes outnumbered opportunities. He once said he couldn't sit by and watch while kids struggled to survive. Of course, watching was not something he was used to. He was usually miles ahead of everyone, even in charitable efforts. In 1994, shortly before his untimely death, Senna began laying the groundwork for the Instituto Ayrton Senna, an organization that would go on to help millions of Brazilian children through education and development programs. The Institute's goal? To give kids a fighting chance in life without needing to dodge favelas, which are shantytowns, like chicanes, which are sharp turns that slow traffic in a race. In other words, give them opportunities and don't hold them back. Senna's activism wasn't just about throwing money at problems, he genuinely cared. But he was also brutally honest. He once joked that in Brazil, you didn't need an education to learn about inequality. You could see it from your front door. It was this kind of wit and unflinching realism that endeared him to millions. Now, some might say that Senna was trying to give back to the people who cheered him every Sunday. Others might say he was trying to make sure the next generation didn't have to rely on karting to escape poverty. Either way, his legacy off the track is about as enduring as his racing dominance. Ayrton Senna proved that you can be a speed demon and a saint, just not at the same time. Weird thing number 2. Senna sat the pole for 65 times. Side note, in racing, in qualifying, the drivers with the fastest lap starts the race on the pole position, which is the best place to start. Senna's 65 pole positions in Formula 1 weren't just a record, they were a flex. It was like he showed up at every qualifying session, looked at the rest of the grid and said, "You're very cute, but this is my pole." For context, 65 poles back then was as absurd as bringing a flamethrower to a snowball fight. It's overkill, yet undeniably effective. Senna didn't just take pole, he obliterated it. While other drivers are still figuring out the best line, he's already signed his name on position 1, gone back to the garage, probably started planning Sunday's victory parade. The only thing more consistent than his pole record was the existential dread it inspired in his rivals. Alain Prost, his fiercest competitor, likely considered therapy every Saturday evening. Senna's qualifying laps weren't ordinary, they were out-of-body experiences. His car seemed to defy logic, as though the wheels weren't touching the track, but levitating just enough to kiss the asphalt. Rain, shine, volcanic eruption, it didn't matter. Senna always found a way to make his car look like it was turbocharged by sheer audacity. And the funny part? He didn't need those poles. Most races he could have started dead last and still made the podium. But Senna didn't settle for good enough. No, he wanted the whole grid to know who was boss even before the race began. His 65 poles stood as the ultimate mic drop until Michael Schumacher eventually broke the record. But this was only after Formula 1 cars practically became space shuttles. Even then, Schumacher probably muttered, Senna would have done it faster. Because with Senna, pole positions weren't just stats. They were the art of intimidation, painted in the tire smoke and unrelenting speed. And finally, weird thing number 1. Senna was a spiritual man. Ayrton Senna wasn't just a Formula 1 driver, he was a spiritual warrior behind the wheel. While most drivers were busy praying their brakes wouldn't fail, Senna seemed to have a direct hotline to the Almighty. He famously spoke about feeling a connection to God while racing, which makes sense because sometimes it looked like his guardian angels were riding shotgun. Senna believed that racing wasn't just about speed, it was about transcendence. For him, every lap was a sermon, every apex a prayer. His competitors, they were just trying not to crash, while Senna was out there looking for enlightenment at 200 miles an hour. Imagine trying to outdrive someone who's treating a Grand Prix like a religious pilgrimage. Your chances are slim. His spirituality wasn't just confined to the track, though. Senna often talked about how his life had a higher purpose, which is ironic considering his higher purpose usually involved overtaking you so fast your mirrors didn't have time to register his car. The 1988 Monaco Grand Prix showcased his spiritual side, or maybe just his godlike one. He lapped everyone except Alain Prost, then crashed into a barrier because apparently divine inspiration has its limits. Later, Senna felt like he'd gone beyond human capability that day. Prost probably found like he needed a priest to exorcise the ghost of Senna out of his career. Off the track, Senna used his spiritual beliefs to guide his charitable work, proving that he didn't just talk the talk, he walked it, or rather drove it, at mind-bending speeds. Senna's spirituality wasn't about mysticism for show, it was raw, unshakable faith. It helped him transcend fear, embrace risk, and occasionally remind everyone that even the heavens seem to favor his racing lines. Well, that's it for today's turbocharged episode. I hope you liked it. Hope it makes you want to watch a Formula One race. Take care and have yourself a great day.